there is something I want to bring up in terms of culture fit, because how do you determine for culture fit? And before you answer, I want to share a little bit of a story. There was a time that I thought some people really aren't meant to work remotely. And I still think maybe some people, from a psychological, mental point of view, they just wouldn't thrive no matter how hard they tried. But then nowadays, I believe that working remotely is a skill. And yes, there are people that are extroverted and they really need to recharge from other people. There are co-working spaces to join, and I'm one of these people that I'm an ambivert, so I need to have a little bit of both worlds. And so there are co-working space so that we can cope with this. Or in an ideal case scenario, it would be a hybrid office. I am absolutely pro hybrid experiences when done right. Um, but I want to ask you about culture fit, because there was a time I used to think not everyone is meant to be, but nowadays, after so many years, after over a decade of working and hiring and leading global teams, I'm thinking, yeah, absolutely, it's a skill. And nowadays, in fact, I'm creating systems and processes about that and empowering people to create boundaries, also to understand something earlier that you mentioned. We don't just go into the office to bond, we actually go and bond, but also do something together work wise, and we enjoy it with each other. And I have a whole different story about that. I have a whole system in place that is focused on synchronous and asynchronous work done in person and also digitally. So, leaving this aside, nowadays I absolutely believe anyone can become productive and happy in a remote setting, because it's a skill like any other, it's acquired. Some people are better naturally, but others can become great. But then again, you have a specific culture in your organization, you have a specific community environment, and not everyone is going to fit in there. Is there a system that you have in place to um, evaluate if someone is a culture fit? What do you even use this term? Um, what are your thoughts on this?
I have not really heard this term in Prezi. Um, I think it's not really in our vocabulary. Um, I prefer the term culture ed, as in that we don't want hundreds of the same people. We want individuals who, as Susan said at the beginning, of course they need to share certain things. Like, for example, our values are important here, of course. Um, but I don't think that there is such a thing as um, there is not like a process checking if you are. I mean, when going through the hiring process, you meet a lot of people, not only the manager, not only the hiring manager or the HR recruiter, but you also meet the team, not just once. And we use assessment days as well so that we see your collaborative skills and how you react to tasks under pressure. And we do this remotely now entirely. And I think, to be fair, the biggest red flags, if I may say it this way, are coming out in this process. If you start working at Prezi, I think you start seeing how people work together. And that's what you start mimicking, I would say. This is what I say most of the time. So, like, some of our colleagues have gone through extreme length of development since they started at Prezi, and not only professionally sometimes. Some of our colleagues claim that I have never worked at such a safe work environment, and I was automatically thinking that we are like against each other in the team, and then I realized that I'm fighting against nothing, for example. That could be seen, for example, from a first view, that they are not a culture fit. However, they were just socialized differently. So I think here what I'm saying is that I think we really try to be inclusive to a point where um, it's not really us saying, or at least I haven't ever met, or Susan, please tell me if we have ever had, anyone being, I'm sorry, this is not your place. I don't think this ever occurred in Prezi. I've only seen some people saying, actually, after the 2 year of COVID period, that sorry, I tried, I love it, but this is not for me. I need my team to sit around me all day. It has happened. But then it wasn't us asking them, that, hey, this is not for you. It was them saying that this is not what they want. And what I also appreciated, that they shared this openly. They said, this is, who I am. I thought I could do it, but it just doesn't, give me enough at this very point.
We are so aligned. I just want to show you something. It's not staged.
Yeah.
You have to read it the other way.
It says cultural ed.
Mhm.
Really?
That is so funny.
That is funny. It was here at the bottom of this, I swear. Yeah. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Everyone brings something unique to the table. And I think if you really take diversity and inclusion seriously, then this is also one of the ways how you need to have different opinions at the table. And yes, I understand that there are things that non-negotiable in terms of values, in terms of certain things. However, I'd still, be more interested in discussion than going against a certain thing or opinion. Susan, what do you
So
think?
I would say that once upon a time back in the day, culture fit was something that we did talk about, and we tried to define it a little bit more. But I think that as we've evolved, absolutely, we realize it's a cultural ad, because we don't want everyone exactly the same, because then it doesn't provide value and there isn't change. And then the other thing would be, I hate it when I lose my train of thought, but the cultural ad part of it. I'm sorry, I totally lost it.
No, but we got the main. We got the main point of what you were saying. It's all about bringing in people to co-create together, right? And
so okay, so bring that back to point, actually, the co-creating and whatnot in community. Would you say that someone doesn't belong in a community? And so that's where it's like we talk about culture and community is actually kind of the hand in hand, one and the same, and depends on how you view it, but it's in that capacity. And it's like, how we weed people out as far as a cultural fit. It's like, well, it's like, no, if you have the skill set and you're willing to participate with us in this community, we value that and we encourage that, and that's something we want. So in that capacity, it's like, oh, we don't necessarily ex-nay people. It's like, how do we bring people in together and include them? And so while we might have some people, and classic scenario where people talk about is introverts, extroverts, it's just like, how do you bring everyone in? And the thing is, well, as much as we try to respect people if they don't want to, and they can participate in whatever capacity that they choose to, but we always offer the option. So it's always a personal choice. So that's where, I mean, like a cultural fit, it's like, okay, as long as you believe in what you're doing with us, that's a great culture fit and a great culture ad, and in whatever capacity you're bringing to the table.